and welcome to Her Success, the live stream. I am Amanda Her, your host for all things success, and I am very blessed to be here today with Sandra Scaiano, one of the intelligent, amazing women that I've been blessed to be in the orbit of since I started my journey as a career and leadership coach. So I'm very, very excited to have her here with us today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Sandra before I allow her to say hello to everyone. But I wanted to go ahead and just let you know how amazing Sandra is. I love it. So she has over 20 years in the PR and marketing space for the world's most recognizable brands. And she helps entrepreneurs move forward in their business through web design, strategy, and digital course build out. Her clients include coaches, speakers, universities, and women living their passion, which, by the way, that's my favorite part of your bio. I love your bio, but that's my favorite part. Expertise in design, digital marketing, and branding allows for her to work long term with her clients and serve them through their different stages of business growth. She's the creator of the Long Game podcast, which we're going to talk about today because it's an amazing podcast and it has such a great message and so much good content. And then where she provides entrepreneurs perspective, encouragement, and a dose of real about business, all with her unique, relatable style. So if you want to get in touch with Sandra, you can always reach out to her on sandrasky.com. Okay. So, and you can also plug into her podcast. It's available anywhere that you can get podcasts because honestly, I listen to it all the time and I get a nugget out of it every single time I listen. So with that, let's go ahead and welcome Sandra Scaiano. So welcome, Sandra. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me and for that warm welcome. I love doing the podcast. It's so good. So much fun.
Yes. Well, and you can totally tell just from the way that you're delivering the information and the way that what you come up with. Like I said, I mean, I've been around the block, right? So we all know I've been in this business for like 30 years. I get something every single time. And we have so much, I feel like, in common about the heart of what we want to do with our businesses, that when I listen in, I'm always like, oh, I got to write that down. Oh, I got to write that down, so it's fantastic. Now, one of the questions that I know you get a lot and I've wondered and asked you about is, how did you come to create the podcast, The Long Game? So like, where did your origin story begin?
Yeah, well, with the podcast, I had been in business 8+ years already, and I was just craving some way to express myself, some type of, it wasn't going to be blogging. I wasn't doing the live stream. I had dabbled in a little bit of everything. There's all these options when it comes to digital promotion and marketing, right? And, it is the epitome of the long game in certain ways. You think about these ideas, you mull it over, and then boom, you launch yourself into action in a way. And so once I realized I'm going to do this, I literally brainstormed 20 topics and hit the road and, running, and just started recording and mapping out my ideas. And, for me, it's been 2+ years now, and it has really been a means to express myself. And, after year one, I started realizing, I'm like, this is really the intersection of creativity and strategy, and that's how I view business. Is like, you've got to be creative, be yourself, bring your unique skills and talents to what you do. And you got to be strategic about it so we can learn from others. We can pick up ideas. It's not just following whatever the trend is, but really what works for you. So that's kind of where I've fallen in. And it has given me a platform to speak and to build a community around. And, even I've been able to get political or share my love of art, or, it's given me a place to express world happenings and all of these things that have been going on besides business ideas. Plus,
Right.
I'm a tech person too, so I love to be able to dive into some of the tech a little bit and expose my audience to where we're going. I just did a series recently on AI, and like,
Yeah.
let's understand what this is and why you need to start following it. I'm not saying you need to use all the apps right now, but why you need to understand how it works, because when you understand the algorithms of the platforms you're using, which are all run by AI, like, you can build a better strategy and
Totally.
know what to do for yourself on those platforms, as an example. So, I
Mhm.
love exposing people to those ideas, and it's given me this space to be able to do that.
Yeah. And it's so funny. We could talk about AI like that entire time, because it is so important to understand what it is, what it's not, how to game the system, all of that. So I'm loving the fact that you're giving this type of information to everyone. And it's not, I know you didn't come to this just like overnight. You said you were in business for 8 years prior to the long game.
Or maybe
And
10, actually, now that I think about it. I'm like, I've been in almost 13. So yeah.
so 13
Yeah.
years, right? And you were an executive, much like myself, at very high level in New York, right? And you were doing the thing, right? And we talk about, on Her Success, we talk about success and what it means to you and the different definitions of success. And for some of us, it's owning our own businesses. For others, it's being in corporate, but it's all about like owning what you want and getting what you want out of your own career, right?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your journey from, being in New York, being, I think you said you were a brand manager or someone that worked with the top brands, and then you've translated that into something completely your own that you've taken ownership of. And I'm just going to preface before you answer, I think it's important for everyone to listen closely, because we tend to forget that what we do at work is like 10 different jobs in the real world. Like, we think, oh, this is our course that we set. Now, a lot of times we're doing like 10 different people's jobs. So listen to Sandra, and she's going to show how she took that talent and made it, into something totally her own. So anyway, as a setup, there you go, Sandra.
Thank you. I'll
Let us
take
know.
that. I'll take that and
Yeah.
run with it now. Yeah, I had been in New York, working in PR and marketing, and as well as sales for 20 years. And with these brands, I was in executive positions of marketing. I was spending
Mhm.
almost $1 million on a party, for a night, like these big budgets and all of those type of things, schmoozing, traveling, all of the fun stuff, getting to go to award shows and that kind of stuff. Right. And, I had been moving along. I was 9 months pregnant, and I went into my office one day and they said, "We're closing the business. Everyone's going home. Clean your desks out." I went into labor that Monday. So two
Oh my
days
God.
later, I went into labor and had, my whole entire world shifted. So I went from, I hadn't taken a vacation in a year. So I was saving up my vacation time for maternity leave. I was literally in a hospital bed saying to my husband, "Go call my old boss and tell him not to cancel the health insurance." Right? Like,
Can't even imagine.
it just happened. Right. And everything I thought and I had planned, I'm very much a planner and like, want to have everything laid out. That was pulled out from under me. And it really was like the biggest change of my life, to go from like, okay, this career piece that just happened, and now I'm a new mom. Right.
As
But
if that wasn't a big enough change.
right, totally. And it was, an unexpected, right? There was like, okay, this is a crazy time. But in my position, I was the managing director of an agency. So I led the sales team, and I was making all of these strategies that the sales team were selling into. We sold sponsorships into these large corporations, all of the brands that And so I really had the strategy locked down, and I have good ideas, and I was really doing that. And the one piece I would sell something in and then pass it off to the team to execute. And I thought to myself after this happened, I have to learn how to execute. So with my newborn baby boy, I say babe on boob. I sat at my kitchen counter in Brooklyn and I learned how to code. I taught myself how to code so that I could start to do these digital pieces, because that's where things were going. I wasn't, I'm a realist. I know that I'm not going back into this office with this newborn baby. And 6 months later, I was pregnant again with my daughter. Yes, the world flashed before my eyes. No, that was going to happen. So like, I was like, my job is schmoozing and going out and working deals and all of that. And I was like, just as a realist, I was like, that's not going to happen here unless I also have a position that pays me double to afford a full-time nanny for 2 kids in Brooklyn, right? Like
and it's not what you want. Like, you don't want to be doing all that.
No,
yeah.
I just didn't want the rush around and all of that to get home and be exhausted at night and all of that.
Yeah.
So I really just decided to make a shift. And, the execution piece was the part I needed. And so I, sat down and really thought, if I can learn to code, I can start doing these things. And, I had this one idea for a business that I was going to do on my own and start it. And it involved like building websites for families to share their family photos off of social media. And I was telling a girlfriend about it. And she told another friend, which got totally misinterpreted, because this friend came to me and said, I heard you're building websites. I need a website for my business. And which I will tell you is the power of your network. Talk about what you want to do, because people talk and they say, hey, Sandra's doing this now. And that phone call set me on a trajectory. I said, all right, I know how to code. I can build a website. I've been making these little family websites. I can build you a website, right? And that client is still with me today. We've redesigned her site, twice over the number of years we've been together. She's a successful personal chef. And, so it's that. And I learned from that experience that I was like, I like doing this. I really like this, interaction and this personal connection that I had with, the woman I was working with. And like I said, that set me on a whole nother trajectory. And from there too, there is not just web design. There is not just coding. Right. Like in our world, you cannot have a website that doesn't have an email opt-in or some sort of other technical piece, SEO. I then just like exploded into learning about all of these other aspects of digital marketing and how to execute them, because my clients needed that. They were coming to me like, yes, build us this website and make it all work, right? So that really set me on a path to explore and dive into all of that. And, that's what the long game is. Like things can happen very quickly. And this is, an important idea for your audience, because I know some people may be in corporate and want to go do something on their own, work in their own passion, right? Their idea. Certain things can happen very quickly, but the long game is about success is the 10-year overnight success, right? You hear about that. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time to compound, and you've got to add learnings and relationships and all of these pieces to it. So for me to get to a certain point, that took me 10 years to really get to a point where I was like, wow, I'm making the money I was making then, and I'm working from home now. And, and I did hit a point where I said, I could never go back, right? Like that. I mean, I hit that early on, but there really was a point where, we had moved out of the city and bought the house. And I was like, I can't, like, this is it. This has got to work. Like, I cannot.
Well, and you are such a go-getter. I mean, just like you were just saying, I sat down, babe on boob, I learned how to code. I did, and that's a lot of the women that you're talking to right now, like the women that are watching this right now. It's women who aren't going to just sit back and go, oh God, okay, I'm just going to accept less. It's women who are like, okay, fine. I'm going to pivot. I'm going to go. It's women in the corporate office going, I'm going for that. I'm doing this and that. It's women who are like, you know what, screw this. I'm going to start my own thing. And these are just women that at the core, what they have in common is they don't accept less. They want more. And so
you don't have to accept less. Yes.
No, you can accept, you can actually create your own journey. And this is, I love what we're talking about with the long game, because it's important to realize these women and me and everyone that it does take a little time. So planning and strategy is a part of that journey. And whatever that looks like for you, it looks like for you, it's a unique thing. But your journey really speaks to, if you put the effort in, you will get what you want out of it. So how do you feel? I mean, what is different for you, as far as how you're feeling about your career now as to what you felt then?
Well, there is just so much possibility online. I consider myself an online business owner, even though I work in person or I'm a service provider in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
I have clients all over the world, and I mean, I'm running a business on Zoom way before COVID happened, right? And
Yeah.
there is so much out there that you can do for everyone, and so sometimes a traditional career can limit you, whereas I'm not limited in what I do here. I'm not limited in my ideas. I'm not limited in the execution of my ideas. It's that figuring out. So I feel so much freer, and I feel so much more fulfilled in a different way. I mean, yes, there was a lot of fulfillment in my past life, and kind of making these markers in the world. So we're hitting these
Yeah.
milestones, so to speak. And
Oh
there was
yeah,
a lot
there's
of
some
fun.
real big highs. Yeah, absolutely.
Totally. But I have now crafted a life that I want to live.
Mhm.
I'm able to care for my family and be there in a way, and run this business, and assert myself and have boundaries where I'm able to insulate myself in certain ways. Like, okay, I'm taking off. I'm taking a week's vacation, and I don't have to put in for it, or all of those things. There is just a different freedom in a way, and but there really is. I know that you talk a lot about, this is the business of possibility. Like,
Yeah.
there is so much possibility available to you, because you can do it your own way. You can be your own success. You can be focused on one thing, or you can be a multi-passionate entrepreneur and have a million things that you do. So
Mhm.
there are no rules in that way.
Yeah.
And so I really think that is the biggest difference, because there was a piece of me when you ask this question, I think about it now, that like sometimes I lived in fear in my old
Yeah.
life, right?
Oh,
Like I was
absolutely.
scared of, and I'm one of those people like, I'll be there at 9 o'clock. I'll be there at 8:50, because
Mhm.
I'm like, I don't want to be late, right? Like
Yeah, on time
even
is
just
late.
those
Yeah.
things were like every day I was putting pressure on myself to get somewhere, whereas now
Yeah.
I'm like, I stroll down to this downstairs into my office. Those are different, but there is this level of fear of repercussions from other people and authority and all of that I've really moved past. I've created these reciprocal relationships with my clients now that they fulfill me in a number of ways. It's not
Yeah.
just me providing a service to them.
Yeah.
I also feel the impact of the work they do by being a part of it. And my I have tentacles that stretch wide now, in a different way. So
I love that. And it's so true. It's so true. I do want to mention that if you are watching and you have a question or anything or a comment, please go ahead and put that in. But I do want to just echo what you're saying. And you had mentioned, this is the second time you've mentioned like the networking part, right? So, and how networking is so important, and your network is going to have you. It's so funny. We were talking before we started about how we bond over cabbage, right?
totally. Well, like it's like your network, right? You know each
Yeah.
other beyond just work. So
Yeah.
you've
Yeah. And I
shared some
think
amazing cabbage recipes that I have been really drawn to. So
yeah, well, I can't help it. I love the cabbage. So, but it is so important. And I said, just being in your orbit, and I've said that to you before, but it is so true. And when you are, a woman in business, regardless of what business, what industry, whatever it is, surrounding yourself with other women who are like-minded and also in business, it is so important, because when you go through things, you will realize you're not the only one going through them, or you're not in a silo when you're trying to decide what that next move is for your career. You can bounce it off of one of the people in your network or in your tribe. And Sandra is one of the closest ones that I have. She's such a dear friend. And I know I can go to Sandra and ask her anything, and she will give me an honest answer. And that's what's so important. And I also know that if she ever met someone that would be helpful to me, or I could be helpful to them, she would definitely put my name out there. So tell me a little bit about how you have built that network and how it's really changed your business over time.
Definitely. I mean, I believe you cannot get there alone. And if you
Totally.
do, like, it's a lonely ride, right? Like,
Mm,
because we are in this space is so different than many of us have been exposed to or brought up in.
mhm.
Many people have been exposed to a traditional corporate ladder climbing, or my parents worked at a university, right? There's just like
Yeah.
a different type of um, culture, work culture that I was raised in.
Mhm.
And you know, you're out there, it's free. You can go in any direction. And I think it's important to have these relationships, like you said, to bounce ideas off of, because you've got to know who to listen to. You've got to know there are people
Absolutely.
who support you, because there are people out there who will just say anything and want you to buy from
Yeah,
them, or all of that. So forming
absolutely.
those
They'll tell you what you want
relationships.
to hear.
Exactly. It's really important. And I think, one of the best ways for women to do that are to join groups. And I
Yep.
have formed relationships from in-person networking groups that I've been a part of. I mean, I make a commitment to these things to go and show up
Mhm.
in person as well as online. It's the same thing online. Very early in my career of web design, I was in this small women's web design network, and there was about 15 of us. And 13 years ago, right, that started, and we have been such friends and champions of each other. And where we can go into a Facebook group and ask a question like, I have a client who wants to do this, does anybody know how to do that? Because I
Mhm.
don't know how to do that. And that's where that support comes in, right? Like, I always used to say, like, you can't know it all. One person
Totally.
cannot
Oh my
know
God.
it all. So, like,
But
for
that's
us
the
to have this,
fallacy. Everyone thinks you have
that
to know
hive mind
everything.
for us,
Yes.
right? I read all of this, you read all of that, and then we'll share the information, so I don't have to go read all of that, right? Like,
Mhm.
we're both having our own experiences in the world, and we're able to share that information between one another. That is so valuable, because as a online business owner, you are problem solving, whether
Yeah.
it's how do I market myself? How do I improve my program? All of, what do I do with this client who asked me this question? You're always problem solving, and, you can't know it all. So to be able to go and, have a place that you can share information, or like you said, like, it's an emotional ride sometimes. So
Oh, totally.
to be able to be like, let me just tell you what happened to me, people. I've got to tell somebody, right? And
Absolutely.
I recently said that Amanda talked me off the ledge of scrapping like a whole several months of work that I had done, and I was like, okay,
But it was
it's
so
not
good.
that
I
bad.
didn't want you to
Thank you,
dump it.
Amanda,
Yeah.
for talking me off the ledge on that, right? But it's another perspective that's outside of yourself, and that network will
Mhm.
always come in and support you when you develop those relationships.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that's not how you grew up in business. And it's so true, because when you grow up in business, when at the time that we did, I'm 52, I'll be 52 soon. I grew up in that, like,
52.
I am. But so when I was in business, I was in sales, and it was like very much like you had your own silo, you did your thing, you protected your stuff, you didn't share. And for women in business, it was very much like it was almost like you were in competition just with that woman. Like, there was no, in the beginning of my career, there was no like, hey, let's work together and help each other. Whereas now it's very much, well, not everywhere, but in a lot of places, it's very much like, let me hold my hand back and help you forward, which is
Mhm.
my philosophy. So it's so important for women who are in mid-career to hear about that. It's branch out,
Mhm.
open up, be honest, have somewhere where you can speak confidentially, network outside your industry, be as good a partner as you are looking to have. Like, make sure all of what you're doing is reciprocal,
100%.
you know, so that it's not take, and you're giving, because you're going to get out of the giving part a lot as well as just like you would from the getting part. And so I love that.
It's relationship building, just like you
Absolutely.
move to a new area and you don't have any friends, right? You're not like, hey, you're my best friend now. People are like, that's a little too much, No, you show
Oh,
up.
that's not good.
Yeah. Oh my! I have forced myself on people when I moved because I was barely like, I need some people in my life. But it is that relationship building. You show up at a networking event, you meet a few people, and then you follow up with them. Hey, here's a link to that book I was telling you about. Great. I followed up the next day and sent that. Or, it's those small steps and thoughtful steps that build relationships. And then, like everything, it's consistency. You show up again so that you can cement relationships as you go. And, it doesn't happen overnight. Relationship building takes time. It takes time, whether it's in our career, with our clients, even in our personal lives, right? It takes time to build that.
Absolutely.
But there's value in doing that. There's, it's
absolutely.
worthwhile.
Exponentially. So I know that in the long game, your podcast available on all of your favorite podcasting platforms, that you've talked about building a community and how building a community can look different for different people. And, it's not necessarily having a Facebook group. It can be other things as well. So I feel like this conversation really trees into some of that. And when you're talking on the long game and some of the topics that you talk about, what are some of the things people can expect when they tune in?
Well, it is an honest perspective. My perspective, but it's also coupled with research and actionable items. So, I have an episode releasing soon about the creative process. And it's something that we've all talked about the aha moments we've had and how it's shifted our course. Well, I go and research, there are 5 steps to the creative process that we all pretty much unknowingly do. So I tie in research and references as well as ideas and stories. There are things that we all do in business and we need to know about. There are tools and resources that we need to know about, like AI, and I'll explore, bringing a lot of strategy to it, but also mindset pieces, and a lot too of how do we bring our whole self to what we create? It's really an example of that. Like I bring my love of art and talk about art references inside my podcast, or the different people that we bring on. Like these are people in my world who have a certain perspective that I think my audience would enjoy. So to bring people on for interviews. So that's what's really cool about it. For anyone that you follow, it is their unique perspective and their unique take on things. And, when you mentioned the community piece, I had to rethink my what I thought community was. Like I have been striving for this community for a couple of years now. I've been toying with it. How am I going to build a community? Which I feel like Dorothy, I'm like, it's right here. I did build a community right here with this podcast and my emails. And
You've had it all along.
I've had it all along. But really, sometimes it can really play a number on your head. You're like, oh no, I don't have this traditional Facebook group where I'm now leading, I'm leading a different way. And I had to, come to terms with that and accept that. And I'm happy with that. So I had to shift my viewpoint of what does community mean to me? Oh, it can mean me sharing and a little bit of feedback rather than a whole big group that I have to manage and all of this. It doesn't have to be traditional in that way. So, the podcast gives me a platform to talk about my ideas, to bring things forward, to bring things that are meaningful to business owners forward, and how you can be more successful in your business as well.
Which is fantastic. And I feel like it also, you're going to be coming out with a new course, coming up. So you're working on a new course, and it also the long game podcast, the course, what we're talking about today, your website, all of that, it just really showcases how all of those talents that you had when you started, and you got, you lost your job because somebody else decided that it was time to close the agency. You had no control over that. Many of us find ourselves in that position. But this, just all of this and your journey and all of the things that you've been able to create, it really highlights how many different talents that go into one position can turn into something completely different and completely fulfilling. And that's the core of it, owning your own career, not accepting less. It's just what is fulfilling to you. Go get more of that. And it sounds so simple, and it is in a way, but it isn't in a way.
You don't have to know the outcome.
Right there.
But
Exactly.
as you take some steps, the path before you becomes clear. The next step becomes clearer as you take a step forward. And things will happen that you could never imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing was, I was just about to ask you the question I ask everyone, which is, what does it mean to you to live like it's possible? So it sounds a little bit like what you just said, but what does it mean to you, Sandra, to live like it's possible?
For me, it means that you don't have to hold yourself back from anything. You are in control of what happens in your life. And it's a long game, so it doesn't have to happen immediately or now. Certain steps can happen now, but again, you have to take those steps to move yourself forward, and the path will appear. And it's amazing the stories we tell ourselves, right, to stop us from reaching or going after our goals.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's really more amazing that the impact that we can have when we actually do go after them and take that step forward. So
absolutely. I love that. It's so true. The stories we tell ourselves. Absolutely. And we need to make sure that they're good stories that we start telling ourselves, positive stories that we tell ourselves.
And
so
all the time. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what stage you're at. 13 years in, and I'm like, talking me off the ledge, right? It happens. So that's just understanding that's part of the journey as well, along the way. So
I love that. And so when someone wants to work with you, I would direct them to Sandra Sky. So it's SandraSky.com, correct?
You got it. Yes.
All right. Awesome. And then The Long Game, the podcast, is available on Apple and all of your favorite podcasting platforms. If you'd like to reach out directly to Sandra, it's Sandra@sandrasky.com, correct?
Yes, you can reach me there. You can also hop on my website and book a call if you want to talk about what's possible for you and your business together.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I am totally jazzed. I'm going to get off our call today and just kind of get at my business. So thank you so much. You're always so inspiring, and I love that about you, along with so many other things. So I appreciate you, and I hope that everyone has enjoyed this session of Her Success. And please make sure to let us know in the comments if you have any questions or anything that you'd like to comment on. And don't forget to also follow me on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. So have a great day, everyone. And again, we will see you next week. We're actually going to be on Friday. So I will see you next week on Friday for Her Success, the live stream.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.